Alright, so I got a story to tell you guys. It's from Ken Ham, who is the president of the Fred Flintstone, the Creationist Museum down in Kentucky. And on his blog on Sunday, he said that we should end the space program because aliens are going to hell. I know, right? This is what he said. I'll just let him do the talking. I'm shocked at the countless hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent over the years in the desperate and fruitless search for extraterrestrial life. Secularists desperate to find life in outer space, or he says they're desperate to find life in outer space because it's part of their rebellion against God in a desperate attempt to supposedly prove evolution. Life did not evolve, but was specifically created by God, as Genesis clearly teaches. Christians certainly shouldn't expect life or alien life to be cropping up in the universe. Now, the Bible doesn't say whether there is or not animal or plant life in outer space. I certainly suspect not. But regardless of whether there was life in outer space, Ham asserted that it is not truly intelligent. You see that the Bible makes it clear that Adam's sin affected the whole universe. This means that any aliens would be affected by Adam's sin. But because they are not Adam's descendants, they can't have salvation. Jesus did not become GodKlingon or GodMartian. Only descendants of Adam can be saved. God's Son remains the God-man as our Savior. Just let that sink in. Just let that simmer in there for a second. Let's let that sit back and just think about what he just said. We should end the space program because God only saved humanity for humans, and he didn't save it for the Klingons and the Martians. So we should end our space program. That's crazy. That's insane. To say that we should end our space program, which has done so much for us. NASA was a pioneer in NASA, and the Soviets were pioneers into pushing space exploration into low Earth orbit and then eventually onto the moon. And without that, we might not have a lot of stuff that we have today and we take for granted. Imagine trying to call people on the other side of the planet, or a lot of stuff with the internet or satellites, TV. A lot of that stuff would not exist today if we didn't have NASA being at the forefront, pushing raw science, and then a lot of that stuff gets sent back into the private industry where average people like me get to experience it. And to say that we should cut it because it doesn't go along with his 2,000-year-old book of religious dogma, it's stuff like that is detrimental to the advancement of science and just humanity as a whole. I'm all for religious freedom. I think that people should be able to worship whatever they want to worship. If you want to worship Zeus, Thor, Muhammad, Jesus, Hercules, whoever, I don't care. As long as you keep it away from our government and know that we have a separation of church and state where your religion can't affect other people and it can't be forced on other people, and as long as you keep it away from children, then I'm perfectly fine with whatever you choose to believe in. But when you want to end stuff like NASA because you think that your religion is so high and mighty that there's no other reason other than to massage God's nuts 24/7, that we should end our space program. Another thing that he said in his blog post was that he doesn't suspect there to be any other intelligent life outside of Earth to exist because it goes against his Bible or whatever, or his interpretation of the Bible. And for him to say that when science knows that there are hundreds of billions of galaxies in the known universe, so what we can see with our telescopes, and there's hundreds of billions, if not trillions, of star systems in each one. There's more planets than there is for grains of sand on our planet. Just let that fathom it into your head. And there's only 22 elements that are needed for life to exist as we know it. So there can be other ways for life to exist that's outside of our means of intelligence. But as of right now, we have found tens of thousands of planets that can support life as we know it. So he's saying that due to his 2,000-year-old book of religious nonsense, that there's a very low. There's probably no aliens or extraterrestrial life outside of our own planet, and that's just, to me, it's insane. It's maddening, crazy. I can't even describe how batshit that sounds. And there's even a lot of religious people who want to have a separation of church and state as well. I think even the majority of religious people in this country want a separation between church and state because they see how important making sure that the government is not influenced or enacts policy based off religious teachings that affects everyone, even if they don't believe in that religion or that specific branch of religion. I mean, most people in my family are advocates of science, and they want to have a separation of church and state, but they're still Christian. And those are the kind of Christians that I like, ones that are for separation of church and state and are advocates of science. But people like Ken Ham, who are fundamentalists, who want to have everything when it comes to everyday life revolve around Jesus. He wants life in America to orbit Jesus's teachings in the Bible or the Bible in general, and I'm against that. I'm extremely against that. I am a strong, staunch supporter of separation of church and state. But one of my favorite atheist YouTubers by the name of Hamet Meta actually responded to Ken Ham. He said that this is a new low even for him. Jesus Christ, Ken Ham is talking about eternal damnation for alien life forms. They're all going to hell apparently, and why go in search of life on other planets if they're all doomed to like a fire? To whine about the pittance of what we spend in space exploration, because Christians certainly shouldn't expect alien life to be cropping up across the universe, has to be a new low even for him. Now, me personally, when I first saw this story on Facebook, I was like, wow, that's fucking crazy. But I would say that when I first started doing YouTube videos about like crazy religious stories, that I was sort of shocked at how dumb some people can be. But then it's like the next day you see the one legitimate rape guy, and then the next day you see Rick Perry saying some crazy stuff, and the next day Michelle Bachmann being, changing her whole entire outlook on vaccinations based off someone coming to her at a rally saying that vaccinations made her child have Down syndrome, which is a debunked theory. But and it's just like constantly you hear crazy religious story, crazy right wing religious story, whatever. And it just gets to a point where it's just like, it's not as, it's crazy, but what do you expect? And at the end of the day, I think that us as a society will look back in 100 years and say, wow, I can't believe people used to, deny evolution. It'd be people like Ken Ham are going to be looked at as like people who used to think the earth was flat. They were, looked at as being in the debate for their time, but in 100 years that would be seen as like flat earthers or the earth or the sun revolves around the earth or something. And I bet you there's like aliens looking at us. You always gotta wonder. I'm like, man, these people, I don't think they're ready for alien contact yet. That might really flip their script upside down, But yeah, that's all I really gotta say. Thanks for watching, and live long and prosper. All right, so I got a story to tell you guys today. Ken Ham, who runs the the Creationist Museum down in Kentucky, said that we should cut the space program because alien or extraterrestrial life are already doomed to hell. So what's the point of exploring space and funding the space program? He said that, this was on Sunday on his blog. I'm shocked at the countless hundreds of millions of dollars that we have spent over the years in a desperate and fruitless search of extraterrestrial life. He also said that secularists are desperate to find life in outer space as part of their rebellion against God in a desperate attempt to supposedly prove evolution. Life did not evolve, but we specifically were created by God, as Genesis clearly teaches. Christians certainly shouldn't expect alien life to be cropping up across the universe. Now, the Bible doesn't say whether there is or not animal or plant life in outer space. I certainly suspect not. But regardless of whether there is life in outer space, he said that it's truly not intelligent. You see in the Bible, it makes clear that Adam's sin affected the whole universe. This means that any aliens would also be affected by Adam's sin, because they're not Adam's descendants. They can't have salvation. Jesus did not become GodKlingon or GodMartian. Only descendants of Adam can be saved. God's Son remains the Godman as our Savior. So he's basically saying because they're not born on Earth, or they're not human beings or Homo sapiens, that because they're Klingons or whatever, they're going to hell. I mean, just let that simmer. Let that sit with you just for a second. I mean, just let that crazy nuttiness just sit back and just think like, wow, man, he's just like, woo, because to me, it's like to cut this space program, which has done so much. I mean, people, they think that when they spend these billions of dollars on the space program, they think all they do is just shoot bottle rockets into the air and build Frosty the Snowman with snow dust and throw rocks at each other up there. But no, every time they go on a mission and want to send a space shuttle into outer space, there's so much raw science that has to go into it. And a lot of that raw science discovers a lot of new things. A lot of things such as the microwave. NASA was also a pioneer into outer space during the space race. So, I mean, just think about that. If NASA wasn't around and we never had any interest in going into outer space, or the Russians as well didn't have any interest in going into outer space,